I hadn't cried in over a decade, but that morning, standing over my mother's casket in the chapel where I grew up, the weight of it all finally crushed me. She had been my rock, the only parent I had left after my dad died in a construction accident when I was a teenager. Watching her waste away from cancer over those brutal 5 months was already hell. But burying her, closing that chapter for good, felt like losing a part of myself I couldn't ever get back. The church was full of people, old friends, distant cousins, neighbors who hadn't spoken to her in years, even folks I barely recognized from childhood. But the only person I really needed was Anna, my wife. She stood beside me in a modest black dress, gripping my hand like she meant it. She kept rubbing my thumb with hers, whispering things like, "You're doing great," and "she'd be proud of you." And I believed her. I really thought she was my shelter in that storm. I noticed her eyes flicking past me once or twice during the service, like she was distracted by someone behind us, but I brushed it off. Grief hits everyone different, right? I chalked it up to nerves. I remember how tightly she hugged me when we stood to say a few words about Mom, how her cheek pressed against mine and her fingers dug into my back like she never wanted to let go. But sometime during the second eulogy, I realized she was gone, just vanished. I assumed she'd stepped outside to breathe or maybe went to the bathroom. Funerals can do strange things to people. I barely noticed in the moment, caught up in my own sadness. But what I didn't know, what no one told me then, was that while I was saying goodbye to the woman who gave me life, Anna was already busy giving herself to someone else. I didn't see her again until the wake at my sister's house. People milled around the backyard, paper plates in hand, offering me solemn nods and weak smiles. The kind of condolences that feel more like reflexes than real comfort. I kept looking around for Anna, scanning the crowd, my heart aching for her touch, her voice, anything familiar to anchor me. Then I saw her. Coming out of the side of the house, her hair a little messy, her cheeks flushed like she'd been rushing or crying. She smiled when our eyes met, that same smile she'd given me 1,000 times before, the one that always told me everything would be okay. I believed it again. Fool that I was. Later that evening, while guests were thinning out, my nephew asked if he could play a game on my phone. I handed it over and he wandered off. 20 minutes later, he came back, pale-faced, holding it out to me without a word. He said he didn't mean to open it, but something popped up on the screen. I took it from him and saw a notification from the photo app. I tapped it, thinking maybe he'd accidentally opened an old video or picture. Instead, I saw a 30-second video, freshly recorded. The quality was shaky, the lighting dim, but there was no mistaking it. Anna, her black dress hiked up around her hips, straddling someone in what looked like the laundry room. The angle was terrible, but just clear enough for me to see the man's face when he tilted it upward. It was Evan, my cousin. My fucking cousin. I froze, my whole body locked up like I'd just been electrocuted. The sounds in the backyard faded into nothing. I just stood there, holding the phone, staring at the image of my wife grinding against the man who used to chase frogs with me in the creek when we were kids. The same man who cried next to me in the front pew that morning. The same man who told me how much Mom meant to him. I walked back into the house like I was sleepwalking. I found Anna near the kitchen, talking to my aunt like nothing had happened, laughing even, laughing. When she saw my face, her expression changed instantly. She knew. She knew I knew. She walked up to me carefully, like stepping through a minefield, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her. At the eyes I used to know like the back of my hand, at the lips I kissed just the night before. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I wanted to scream, but there was a thick lump in my throat. I walked out, just left the house, circled the yard, and sat in my car. The video kept playing in my mind on a loop. Every movement, every sound, my cousin's face, her moans, it all merged into one filthy, disgusting scene. 10 minutes passed before I pulled myself together. I walked back in, cold now, like something inside me had died. She was sitting on the floor in the hallway, face buried in her hands. "It was a mistake. I don't know what came over me," she started, but I raised my hand. "At my mother's funeral, Anna. You thought that was the right time?" She broke down crying, trying to explain that she was overwhelmed, that he hugged her, that she was drunk. But none of that mattered. Not one bit. She didn't just cheat on me at the worst moment of my life. She did it in the most sacred place, in my mother's house, while people were grieving, talking about love, about loss, about family. And in that exact moment, she went and fucked my cousin in the laundry room. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the black window, sipping cold coffee I didn't even taste. Every time I closed my eyes, it played again. Her hands in his hair, his hands on her waist. Her face. That face. I wanted to vomit. I didn't. I just sat there, feeling like my skin didn't belong to me anymore. She came downstairs once, around 3 a.m., eyes swollen, wearing one of my hoodies like it would make her feel closer to me. I didn't say a word. She didn't either. Just stood there, trembling, before turning and walking back up. I hated how much I still loved her. That was the worst part. The betrayal was deep, brutal, but somewhere behind all the shattered trust and disgust, my heart still ached for her like a wounded animal. By morning, I knew I couldn't stay. The funeral was over. My mother was gone. And now, so was my marriage. I packed 2 bags, grabbed my keys, and left. She followed me to the door, pegging, crying, repeating, "Please," like a broken record. I didn't say goodbye. I just drove off with the image of her on the porch, clutching herself like she was the one who got hurt. She tried to call me, over and over. The first day, my phone lit up with her name more than 60 times. I didn't answer once. Not because I didn't want to hear her voice. God, part of me ached to. But because I knew if I did, I might go back. And going back would destroy me. I turned off my phone, parked at some cheap motel off the interstate. I just sat there in the silence, letting the numbness take over. Hours passed like smoke. I didn't cry, I didn't sleep. I just kept replaying everything in my mind. The look on her face when I caught her, the panic, the guilt. But what killed me most was that there wasn't enough shock in her eyes. As if she wasn't surprised I found out, just horrified that I actually saw it. Like she had expected this would happen someday. And maybe she had. Maybe she had grown so distant from me that she didn't care if the truth slipped out. The funeral was supposed to be about my mother, about grief, about family. But she turned it into a personal tragedy. Mine. Our friends were still in town. My sister, my mom's neighbors. Some of them had probably seen her slip away with him at the reception. Maybe they whispered about it. Maybe they knew something I didn't. That humiliation burned hotter than any rage. I could have forgiven a mistake, a moment of weakness, but this wasn't that. This was a decision. She chose to do that, on that day. While I stood there in a suit, reading my eulogy, shaking hands, holding back tears, she was betraying me with another man. A man I knew. One of the guys from the old neighborhood. A guy who had hugged me right after the service, said, "Your mom was an angel, man."
like he hadn't just defiled her memory by sneaking off with my wife. I felt like a joke, a pathetic punchline in someone else's story. I smashed my fist into the motel wall until my knuckles bled. It didn't help. Nothing helped. I thought of calling my sister, but what would I say? Hey, remember Mom's funeral? Turns out my wife was screwing a guy in the back room while you were hugging people goodbye. I couldn't. I didn't want to relive it through anyone else's reaction. I needed silence, isolation, detachment. But isolation doesn't heal you. It just delays the collapse. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Red eyes, pale skin, cracked lips. I hadn't eaten in over a day, and yet the hunger I felt wasn't for food. It was for answers. Why? Why him? Why then? Why didn't she stop herself? Why didn't she care about me enough to not ruin the one day I needed her most? I knew I'd have to talk to her eventually. There were bills, legal stuff, the house, our dog. But I wasn't ready. I didn't want to hear excuses or apologies. I didn't want to be told it was a mistake or a moment of grief. It wasn't grief. I knew grief. I was grief. She was something else entirely. And I had no idea what to do with that.